We're continuing our popper series with this game changer popper. At first glance, it might look like a normal popper, but there's one thing that makes it very different. Not only does it create a ton of commotion on the surface by spitting water and making a loud popping sound, but this articulated tail has an incredibly lifelike swimming action. This combination gives the appearance of a wounded baitfish struggling at the surface, and can trigger explosive strikes from predatory fish. Best of all, while it does take some time to tie, the individual steps are actually pretty simple. This is McFly Angler.
And it starts now.
Okay, let's get started tying. Place the first spine securely in your vise. Now today I'll be using these articulated spines from Spawn. I'll use a 9mm, 10mm, 15mm, and 20mm. We'll start with the 9mm section for the tail. We'll also need some thread, and I'll be using Viva's 6/0 in brown. This is a round thread that is very strong for its diameter, making it perfect for today's fly. By the way, I snagged you all a deal with Vivas, and more on that later in the video. Alright, back to the spine. Start your thread, then jump over the top to close off the spine. Wind back as far as you can into the rear eyelet, and then snip or snap off the waist. Then make a few passes up and down to smooth out that bump. I'll be using craft fur for the tail today, but of course you can use any material you like. Cut off a good clump, remove the underfur, and reduce the taper slightly. If you like more information on working with craft fur, I go into much more detail in a short that I'll link in the description section below. Measure out roughly 4 spine lengths for the tail and tie it in so it drapes evenly on either side of the spine. Trim off the waist and clean up that area. Now a little flash can add a nice shimmer to the tail, so I'm going to use this Mirage Flashaboo. Cut a single strand off and fold it in half, aligning the tips. Then tie it in so it extends slightly past the craft fur. Then fold the forward-facing ends back and secure them on the opposite side. Once that's done, trim everything to the same length. Now we need a tapered brush. I made this one myself, and if you have a brush table, I also have a short showing exactly how I made them, and I'll link that in the description section as well. One thing to notice is that this brush is two-toned. The darker fibers are positioned at the widest part of the taper, which means the head of the fly will end up darker while the tail remains lighter. Of course, you can make these in solid colors too, however you want to build them. You can even buy tapered brushes already made if you don't want to make your own. Alright, tie in the brush at the base of the tail, and then use wire cutters to free it from the stem. Be careful here, and push down that sharp tag end because it can easily cut your thread. Clean up the area, and finish with your thread near the eye of the spine. Now begin wrapping the brush forward with close touching turns, making sure to stroke the fibers rearward with each wrap, and I was able to get 4 wraps on this section. Capture the wire, pull it rearward, and wrap back up onto it. Then cut the wire free, push down that sharp tag end, wrap over it, and whip finish. Now we should cement the whip finish, and I like using this Solarez ultra thin resin. Use a brush built into the cap to apply a small amount on the thread wraps, and then cure it with your UV light. This makes the fly incredibly durable. Alright, once that's finished, brush out the fibers to release any trapped strands, remove the tail from the vise, and place the 10mm spine in. Now we need to attach the tail section. Before doing that, take a look at the base section that we just tied. We want to keep everything right side up. To attach it, pull down slightly on the eyelet to open the gap, and then slide the tail section into place like so. Close it off with a few thread wraps and smooth out the transition. Finish with your thread near the rear of the spine. Using the same brush, pull a small amount of fiber away from the back to expose the wire core, and then tie the brush in with some tight wraps. Then bring your thread forward near the eye, wrap the brush forward just like before, and this time I was able to get 5 wraps on the spine. Capture the wire the same way, wrap forward onto it, clip it free, push down the sharp tag end, wrap over it, and whip finish. Apply a little resin to the head, cure it with your UV light, and then brush out the fibers. Now as this section gets longer, you'll trap more fibers while wrapping, so I find picking them out with my bodkin helps even more. Alright, remove it from the vise and take a look. We're already starting to get some nice articulation. Alright, next is the 15mm spine. And from this point forward, the process is essentially the same. We'll attach the previous section, tie in the brush, wrap it forward, capture the wire, whip finish, cement the head, and brush out the fibers. And this fly may look complicated, but once you tie one section, you've basically learned the entire fly. The rest is simply repeating those same steps while gradually building the profile. Okay, now for the final articulated section, the 20mm spine. Just like before, we'll attach the previous section and repeat the same process. One thing I do want to point out is the progression of the tapered brush. Because the brush gradually increases in diameter, there's no need for trimming later, like I've had to do with some other game changers I've tied. The tapered brush does most of the work for us, making this fly considerably easier to tie. We're also getting into the darker portion of the brush now, and of course making a two-tone brush isn't required, I just wanted to simply show you that option. But you can make these in solid colors, two-tone like this one, 3 colors, or however many colors you'd like. Try adding a bright chartreuse tail with a black head, or a red stripe to imitate gills. Experiment with different color transitions. I mean, if you're making your own brushes, you can really customize these flies and make them unique to your local waters. Okay, with that final section complete, the entire articulated body is finished. Now we just need to build the head section. For the hook, I'll be using a Risen O'Shaughnessy in size 2. The main reason I'm choosing this hook is that it's a stainless steel. Since I plan on fishing these in the salt, corrosion resistance is important. Place the hook securely in your vise. We'll also be switching threads here. I'll be using this Vivus 140 power thread. And unlike the 6/0 that we used earlier, this is a flat thread and considerably stronger, which is exactly what we need for this head section. Start the thread near the hook eye, and then wrap back into the bend, and then return to the start of the bend. Now we need a way to attach the articulated tail. For that, I'll be using some intruder wire. This particular wire is designed for hook sizes 6 and larger. Cut a piece with wire cutters, rather than your good tying scissors, and a section this length should be enough for 3 to 4 flies. Tie the wire in near the rear of the hook, slightly off to one side rather than directly on top. Wind up with tight wraps, but leave a small tag end. Then fold that tag back and tie it down as well. This simple step helps ensure that the wire won't pull loose later. Run the wire through the eye of the tail section, and then double it back onto the hook. And try to keep the loop fairly small. Make 3 to 4 wraps, but don't fully lock it down yet. Before tightening everything, we need to adjust the size of the loop. What we're looking for is a straight alignment between the articulated body and the hook shank. So adjust the wire until the rear section sits directly in line with the hook. Once you're happy with the alignment, secure the wire with tight wraps. Bring the wraps rearward so the loop is as small as possible while still allowing the tail to move freely. Be sure that the loop remains centered and straight up and down. And you'll notice that I'm twisting it slightly towards me as I tie down to keep everything aligned. You may also notice that the returning wire is sitting directly alongside the original wire. Continue wrapping forward until you pass the end of the second wire, and then fold it back and secure it as well. Use wire cutters to trim away the excess, and then once that's done, clean up the area with some thread wraps and smooth out the transition. It might also be a good idea to add a little super glue or Solarez resin to these wraps before moving on, but since I'm not using a trailing hook here, it's less crucial, but a little extra insurance doesn't really hurt. Now we'll need the popper head. I'm using these howitzer heads, boy I hope I pronounced that right, in the medium size, paired with 6mm eyes. Now these heads don't come pre-drilled, so we'll need to create a hole for the hook. Push your bodkin through the center of the foam to create an opening. Now I didn't quite come down as low as I normally like. Ideally, I'd position the hook slightly lower on the head so it spits a little bit more water. Now it'll work just fine, but it's something to keep in mind. Next, push the hook through the hole to open it up further, and you can see the hook eye sits directly in the center, both vertically and side to side. Again, I would have preferred it slightly lower, but this will still fish well. Slide the head onto the hook and position it where you want it to sit. Then make a mental note of where the back of the head sits, and I like to use a Sharpie to mark that section so I know exactly where to stop wrapping the materials. That prevents us from crowding the head later. Tie in the brush once again and bring your thread forward to the mark that we just made. Now wrap the brush up the hook shank exactly like we've done on every previous section. Once you reach the mark, capture the wire on bare stem while trying not to trap too many fibers. This becomes a little more challenging with the longer fibers. Sometimes separating the fibers before wrapping helps, and you can also wiggle your thread up through the material to avoid trapping it. But once the wire is secure, pull everything rearward and wrap up onto it. Cut the wire free, push down the sharp tag end, wrap over it. Now spend some time picking out the fly. With these longer fibers, you actually need a little more brushing and picking to free everything up. Now the popper head has a tendency to spin on the hook. Fortunately, there is an easy fix. Take a short piece of hard mono, somewhere in the 16 to 25 pound range, cut off a small section and tie it in with a couple X-wraps so it sits perpendicular on the hook shank. Once that's secure, bring your thread forward and whip finish. Trim the mono very short, and those little stubs act like supports to help prevent the foam from rotating around the hook. It's a simple trick, but it works surprisingly well. Now, before attaching the head, I like to color the front face. Today I'm using this bright orange permanent marker. Other common colors would be hot pink, red, or chartreuse. Use whatever you prefer. Now we're ready to glue the head in place. For this step, I strongly recommend a gel-type superglue. The thicker consistency gives you a little extra working time to adjust the head before everything sets. Apply a generous amount on both the top and bottom of the hook shank, and then slide the head into place. Before the glue fully cures, remove the fly from the vise and look at it straight from the front. Make sure the head isn't canted to one side. I also like to move the fibers around a bit at this stage, especially if they're bunched up on one side. If they're bunched up on one side, now is the time to fix it. Once that glue sets, everything will stay exactly where it is. You can also see that we still have a nice gap between the hook point and the head. That's important because if the head sits too low, it can interfere with your hook sets. The fibers also provide a bit of a weed guard protection around the hook point, but they'll easily move aside when a fish eats the fly. And take a look at that movement. That articulated tail looks fantastic. Okay, now let's add some eyes. I'm using fish skull living eyes in the fire color and 6mm size. I like to pull a couple off the backing and stick them on my hand so they're easy to grab. Place a small drop of super glue into the eye cavity, and you don't need much here. We don't want the glue squeezing around the edges. Press the eye into place and repeat on the other side. Alright, now it's time to color the head. I'll be using add markers today. We already used that cadmium orange on the face, and now I'll be using a mocha and sepia color for the rest of the head. These markers are fantastic, but they're also fairly expensive, and colored Sharpies work perfectly as well too, so don't feel like you need anything fancy. I'll use a mocha on the top portion of the head, then finish the rest with sepia. Make sure you cover the rear edges so none of the white foam shows through. You can also get creative here. Add dots and stripes, mix colors, whatever you think looks good. On this one here, I added a few black dots with a Sharpie. And one of the best things about these poppers is how easy they are to customize. Before coating the head, we need to let these markers dry. So pull the fly out of the vise and tie yourself another one while we wait. Once the markers have dried, we can apply the finish. The Solarez Top Coat 77 is the best product I've found for coating popper heads. It's flexible, incredibly durable, and leaves a really nice finished appearance. Using the brush built into the cap, apply an even coat around the entire head. You may need to dip it back into the bottle a few times to get enough material, and don't forget to coat the front face as well. Now, one thing I really like about this product is how thin it is. Unlike some coatings I've used in the past, I haven't found that it gums up the hook eye. Because of that, I no longer bother protecting the eye with a wire like I used to. Okay, once everything is coated, slowly rotate the fly in the vise to prevent any runs or drips from forming. Then begin curing with your UV light. I like to start further away and gradually move the light closer. This stuff cures incredibly fast compared to some other products that I've used, and I suspect that's partially due to how thin it is. In fact, it's already finished. The result is a durable, tack-free finish that remains flexible. You can see me compressing the foam head here, and the coating doesn't crack. That flexibility allows it to hold up fish after fish while keeping the fly looking great. Before wrapping things up, I want to show you another option. This fly was tied entirely in white. Instead of building the color with the materials, I simply colored the finished fly with markers. Here I'm making a belly white while coloring the top chartreuse. This allows you to create completely different color combinations from the same base fly, and the possibilities are practically endless. You can color the head, color the body, add stripes, dots, and gill markings, whatever you think matches the forage of your local waters. Of course, I'll coat this one as well, although in this case I didn't quite let the markers dry long enough, and you can see the red gill mark bleeding slightly into the white. But there we have it, the finished Game Changer popper. It really isn't very difficult to tie. It simply just takes some time. In many ways, it's like tying 5 separate flies and connecting them together. The nice thing is that once you learned how to tie one section, you've essentially learned the entire pattern. Other than the head, the process is mostly repeating the same simple steps over and over. And these flies are incredibly customizable. Here's a few different color combinations I've tied, and I'm sure you can come up with some amazing combinations of your own, perfectly matched to the forage of your local waters. These not only work extremely well for bass and other freshwater species, but they're also surprisingly effective in salt water. I spend quite a bit of time fishing the Gulf for redfish and speckled trout. And by the way, speckled trout aren't actually trout at all. That's just a common name that we've given them, but they absolutely love topwater flies. And this pattern will work exceptionally well for them. That's why I use that saltwater hook. Alright, well that officially wraps up this month's popper series. And it also filled up my fly box with what I think are some of the coolest popper patterns out there. We started with the deer hair popper, not the easiest fly to tie, but certainly one of the most rewarding once it's finished. Then we moved on to a much simpler foam panfish popper, a great option for bluegill and sunfish, or tied larger for bass. And finally, we wrapped things up with this game changer popper. 3 very different approaches to tying topwater flies, but all of them are incredibly effective fish catchers. Next month I'll be starting a new series built around my top 5 fly picks for different species. And we'll kick things off with my top 5 trout flies. And I'll show you how to tie every fly on the list. It should be a fun series. So make sure you're subscribed and click that bell notification so you don't miss any future videos, including next week's top 5 trout flies. By the way, those fly boxes you saw earlier are the same boxes I sell on Amazon. They have plenty of room for larger flies like these poppers without crushing the materials. They're also made entirely from foam, so they'll float if you accidentally drop one in the water, which means you won't lose all your flies if you're as clumsy as I am. And I'll have my Amazon storefront linked in the description section below, where you'll also find my other fly boxes and hats. So if you're interested, go check them out. As promised, here's that Vivas deal. Their VIP program is $99, and that gets you 10% off of everything. Also a $120 gift card and a free shirt. And if you use my link below, they'll even throw in a free bobbin holder as well. Or if you don't want the VIP, you can still get 10% off just by using that link. Also, check out my sponsor Risen Fly. They made the hooks I use today, but also make some awesome fly rods and other gear at amazing prices. They're offering you all 15% off your first order. Just use that code McFly at checkout to get the discount. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, let me know by clicking the like button. And apparently the new thing is to hype videos, so feel free to give it a hype as well. And if you know someone who would enjoy learning how to tie these flies, share the video with them. I'll see you on the next video. Now you go catch some fish.